Hello and welcome to another edition of Sunspots. I'm your host, Evan Cooke, speaking as always with the head coach of the Okanagan Sun, Ben Macauley. Team fresh off a 20-10 victory over the Kamloops Broncos over the weekend. Coach, let's talk a little bit about that game to start. What were your overall impressions of that? You're going into the game knowing that Kamloops is a team that plays better in their field than they do on the road. Did you get the type of game from them that you were expecting?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the only question mark for us was how they were going to play, knowing now that they weren't going to be in the playoffs. They're a well-coached team. They've got an excellent set of talented, skilled players. They're a little lighter on the offensive line than I'm sure they'd like to be, but they're developing into a pretty good unit again. So we also looked back at their body of work over the season, and they've been in a lot of close games. So they just haven't been able to finish. And, fortunately for us, that continued on Saturday. But, they're a dangerous team, and I think with a few more pieces, they're a really competitive ball club.
Yeah, their head coach, Mokka, had talked earlier in the week about how there were going to be guys that were going to get into the lineup and get playing time, given the fact that playoffs were no longer an option for them. Did you see that shuffling as you expected to over the course of the game?
Not really. I was hoping for a little bit more, but they have some talented. I think the big thing for them is that a lot of their young guys were the stars for them this year. Guys like Maximilian Joseph, as he prefers, and Colby Hankel's only in his second year. So they've got some good pieces there that are just really starting out their junior careers, and if they choose to stay, they're going to be a really strong, talented group, and that coaching staff, if they can stay together, have some consistency there. It's a great facility and a great program, and Brad's done a really good job there.
Going back to week 2, the Sun put up a shutout here against that team, held them to 10 points over the weekend. Did you like what you saw defensively in this second matchup against them?
Yeah, we gave them a couple of longer passes against sort of a secondary that was patchwork and guys playing out of position a little bit due to injury, but they were able to get down within scoring range, and we were able to hold them to field goals, and to be able to do that against a team that's on your 3-yard line, that's a big statement. And I don't know if we had 5 or 6 sacks, something in that territory, but our guys were great tacklers. We played a very aggressive brand of football on defense. We just had some lapses in assignments, and part of that's just new personnel, and a lot of guys who are normally second stringers coming off the bench had to start and play the duration of the game.
Want to get back to injuries in a minute, but let's talk offensive side of the ball as well, because getting held to 20 points, if you're the Broncos, are probably looking at that as an accomplishment given some of the totals that the offense has been able to put up this year. How did you feel about how their game progressed?
Well, I think we did some things well. We saw that our last opportunity to get guys some reps that we're not certain about, and heading into our playoff season, how that roster is going to shape up. There's still some things we wanted to test out, and we got a chance to do that. We also had a chance to see some guys who are normally making plays struggle with some adversity, and we had some early injuries, and we've had guys who weren't feeling 100%, and they had to battle through that in order to finish the game. Fortunately, we had Nate Anderson step up and make a couple of huge catches for touchdowns, which allowed us some breathing room and the ability to walk out of there with a win. But we saw some things that we need to work on. We need to continue to build our depth, be able to run the football, be able to get out of our own red zone, and make a couple of first downs and swing back field position when we have to.
Special teams as well. Isaac Wagner's been a guy that you've been able to trust a lot this year, and he had a couple of misses in this game. What were your thoughts looking back on that?
Well, we found out after his second missed kick that he hurt his foot during warm-ups, and something we had hoped to hear a little bit sooner than a second field goal. But all it did for us was we had to shorten our range up a little bit. The first 2 field goals were sort of at the fringe of his range in game that he's successfully done before. So we decided to just shorten that leash up a little bit and give our offense the control a little bit longer and get him closer. And when we got him closer, he was perfectly on target. It wasn't an issue with accuracy, really. I think he just wasn't hitting the ball, striking the ball like he'd like to, and we'd like him to. That being said, he still went out and did a great job of punting and place kicking, and that's very effective for us. We had an onside kick recovery because of an excellently placed ball by him. So, the 2 field goals come up on the stat sheet, but he's, for a rookie, he's really contributed above and beyond our expectations.
Injuries is something that the team has had to deal with all season, and it seems like, again, now it's becoming a big deal with more guys getting added to that list. You mentioned on the defensive side, guys coming in, playing more time than they usually do, playing maybe different positions than they usually do as well. The secondary is a little bit banged up. Talk a little bit about what you're facing that position going forward.
Yeah, we're missing guys who were probably, early estimate BC Conference All-Stars. Beck Fullerton is out, Aldrich Barrios is out, and those two are, vocal and emotional and physical leaders on the field. So you're missing them. You notice when they're not out there. We're also missing Trey Adams, who's second-year halfback, and he's a sure tackler, and he's never missing on his assignments. So, those guys, you take those 3 guys out of that starting lineup, and we're a completely different team back there. Not to say we don't have a lot of skill coming in afterwards, but that sure changes the dynamic.
Who are some of the guys that you really saw step up in their absence over the weekend?
Well, we had Ryan Iwashko step in and play a tough role for him, being able to cover guys who are probably a little bit faster, but he's all effort and all heart, and he made some great plays when we needed him to. Guys like Tyler Going, Connor Richard, out of position, moved to halfback this week, stepped in and did a great job, not being 100% comfortable in that position, having been playing linebacker all year. So those guys were immediate impact guys, and then our defensive line really made it easier on them. They forced a ton of pressure on Henkel, and early on in the game were able to put pressure on him and get solid hits and sacks on him. So that made a big difference as far as the defensive backfield goes. They were able to rest on their heels a little bit more.
Yeah, you've had a defensive line they've certainly grown as the year has gone on, and you talk about putting a pressure on a young quarterback over the weekend. How big a difference does that make when you can establish that tone early on, but kind of get him thinking in the back of his head, maybe I don't want to take that extra second to try and make this pass because I know they're coming?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's something that every coach has nightmares about. Is how do we match up across the front? And anytime you can get the math right, if you're an offensive coach, you've got enough guys to block enough guys, then you're looking at one-on-one matchups. And we've got guys like Mitch Lyons who doesn't lose in one-on-one matchups. They have to double team him, and there were instances where there was guys hanging off of his back with no flag being called, and he still somehow makes a play. So when you have someone like that who's able to make plays even when he's not supposed to, that really gets into a quarterback's head, and he's looking at the defensive line rather than where he should be.
And you mentioned some of the guys in your linebacking core, but does it really highlight the depth that's at that position for your team when guys are able to step in to fill defensive back positions and help out there and move around and not be 100% comfortable on the field, but still be able to make plays for you?
Yeah, if you look at Shaun Robinson can cover just as well as he can play the run, and Eli Haynes as well is showing his range. And then coming off the bench is Cody Thompson, who's been phenomenal for us in special teams and other areas. That allows guys like Tyler Going and Connor Richard to move out and do other things because they're athletic enough. So really, really a feather in our cap to be able to say that's the heart and soul of our defense.
And Shaun Robinson, a guy that you've put on the D line before this as well during the season too as a pass rusher. He was a guy that didn't make it out of the game fully healthy. What's an update on where he's at right now?
We don't have a full update yet. He's with our great training staff right now at the training facility, and they're taking a look at how serious his injury is. But it was something that happened late in the game and didn't seem like much of the time. But we just want to make sure that he's good to go before we put him back out there. But he can do a lot of things, and he's a guy on CFL radar. because of his pass rushing abilities and because of his open field tackling and his aggression. So, we're really happy with how he's performed for us this year, and hope he can get back to being 100% right away because, he's a big part of our defense.
On the offensive side, you gained Keith Zyla back a couple weeks ago in the Chilliwack game. How do you feel he's at this point in the season, having missed that chunk, but back ready to contribute?
I think, I was thinking about that the other day, and that he really hasn't missed a beat. Having been on the bench for so long and waiting for his turn to get back out there is not an easy thing to stay mentally engaged, and he's done that for sure. He knows exactly what the reads are and what he's supposed to be doing. The problem is his body isn't quite fully caught up with him. Mentally he's there, and the timing is still a little bit off. But he's making good decisions, and we've got full trust in him. Had a little setback in his back. He pulled a muscle, so had a hard time really getting some power on the ball. But when he does, he has a really strong arm and makes it tough to cover our fast guys down the field.
We talked last week a little bit too about having lots of mouths to feed on offense in terms of getting guys their touches, and we had a few weeks ago where it was Rashawn Simonides who had a couple of touchdowns. You had Shamar Donaldson with the 4-touchdown game a few weeks back. Nate Anderson, like you mentioned, with a couple of scores this past weekend. Is it becoming an advantage for you guys to have different guys that'll step up every week so that opposing defenses can't just focus in on that one or two guys to really shut down?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really echoes our team philosophy in that it's got to be someone else every week. If we're hanging our hopes on one or two guys, then we're probably going to see an early exit this season. But the fact that we can rely and trust some of our top players, and that number of players who we trust is growing and growing every week, that's something we can hang our hat on come playoff time. We ask them to play multiple positions, both sides of the ball, when we're light on bodies, and those guys have earned that trust, and it's really exciting to see what they're capable of, and it's exciting to know who's going to step up or to not know who's going to step up on any given day. So, we're looking forward to this weekend again. Well, we don't know who it's going to be. It's going to be someone, though, and we're going to step up and make some big plays, and it'll be exciting.
Langley Rams are in town this weekend. Sun beat them 34-17 earlier in the season in Langley, but it was a game that was close really through three quarters, and you guys pulled away in the fourth. Are you expecting another tight one with them this weekend?
I'm certainly hoping not, but it is getting to that time of year where teams are getting better and the parity becomes a bit more evident across the league, and Langley's no different. They're very talented. They've got a great coaching staff. They play a really intense brand of football, and they come to win, and they've got a lot of swagger, and we expect to get everything they've got. They've got nothing to lose this weekend as well. But that being said, we have full faith that our defense and our talented offensive weapons will win the game for us. And our X factors, our special teams are outstanding, and we continue to dominate in those categories. And I expect no less this weekend. We get to play in front of the best fans in the country, at the best venue in the country, and it's a lot of fun. It's really an enjoyable experience to get out there, and this week we're just planning on flying around and having fun playing football again.
Last question for you. This final week matchup against the West Shore Rebels, which is basically going to decide first place from what it's looking like in the league this year. Is that matchup getting tougher to ignore as it gets closer and closer on the calendar for you?
Potentially. Most of it's because of reminders from the media and from other people around the league. Whether we finish in first or not is really not a huge concern. Our goal is to win a BC championship, and that's not one next week. It's one, in the second round of playoffs. So, that's our goal, is do as well as we can to improve every week. If we're beaten by a team that gives us their best shot and we've given ours, so be it. But if we play our best brand of football, we're unbeatable. And that's the goal this weekend, is be unbeatable, and then we'll get right back to it next Monday and work toward that same goal again.
Okanagan Sun are back in action at home at the Apple Bowl Sunday afternoon. That's October the 1st for a 1 p.m. kickoff against the Langley Rams, which you can see live right here on Shaw TV. Thanks for watching.